you've got Democrats who are calling for transparency, across the board, Clinton and Trump, and you've got Republicans doing everything they can to close ranks and protect Trump whilst going, this is about openness, transparency and accountability, and using the victims as a weapon in this continuation of this polarised fight. I find it absolutely abhorrent.
And Rachel Cunliffe here with me on Pienaar and Friends from the New Statesman and Adam Boulton. We're joined now by Lara Spirit, the Times Washington correspondent, on the line. Hi to you, Lara.
Hi, John.
Hi. So a few things be good to talk about. Hillary Clinton, start with that, shall we? I mean, she's been testifying behind closed doors, hasn't she, to the congressional committee, the oversight committee looking at the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. We had earlier on the Republican Congressman James Comer, who heads the committee, talking about the investigation, saying it's a bipartisan investigation.
The Democrats voted to subpoena the Clintons. The Democrats voted with the Republicans to hold the Clintons in contempt. Mm-hmm. So the Democrats have just as many questions for the Clintons as the Republicans. So this isn't a partisan witch hunt. This was a motion, a bipartisan motion, mm-hmm. supported by the Democrats mm-hmm. to bring the Clintons in.
The Republican James Comer, but Richard Goodstein, who's a former Clinton campaign advisor, he wasn't impressed. Have a listen.
Look, I think the public sees right through this. This hearing today, tomorrow, is not on the up and up. From day one, both Bill and Hillary Clinton have said, release the files. Incidentally, there's no precedent, zero, for a former president or former first lady to be subpoenaed and asked for testimony, which they submitted in writing earlier this year. But no, Comer, the chairman, wanted a spectacle. We'll see, frankly, whether the tape actually gets released, because the Clintons said, let's make this public. They know one party, let's say Bill Clinton, is acting as an innocent person would, and one person is acting as a guilty person would. That person would not release the files when he, as president, had the authority to do it.
Talking there, of course, about Donald Trump. Richard Goodstein there, former Clinton advisor. So Lara Spirit, I mean, have we heard any more about what was going on in that closed door session?
Yeah, I mean, so we know that Hillary Clinton has halted pretty abruptly that closed door testimony because of a photograph that was leaked of her taken by a representative, Lauren Boebert of Colorado, who had shared a photo of her answering questions, posted on social media and shared by Benny Johnson, who is, of course, a podcaster, an ally of the president. Already we knew ahead of this from Clinton via a statement that was put out that she felt that this was a partisan witch hunt against her, that she'd offered all the information, as your former guest said, that she knew. And of course saying, she'd never knowingly even met Epstein, never travelled on the plane, never visited his island, and fails to see what the point of this hearing is. So they had been pushing to have this in public. Clearly that hadn't happened. But then there was this photo that was leaked, and Hillary Clinton now saying, given that she pushed for this to be in public, she is, halting this testimony because she feels like this has clearly been quite a unjustified breach of those terms.
It's now resumed.
The hearing is now resumed?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll follow that as far as that's possible. What's your take on what we're hearing, Adam?
Well, a quite remarkable opening statement, printed statement released by Hillary Clinton, in which, amongst other things, she made the point that the Comer, the chairman of the committee, keeps on talking about what openness and wanting to get to the facts, yet he's the one who's decided that these hearings should take place behind closed doors. But the main thrust of what she says is that reason why she didn't want to testify and had to be subpoenaed and threatened with contempt was because she'd never met Epstein. She thinks she'd met Ghislaine Maxwell several times. And of course, Bill Clinton is going to testify tomorrow. Now, the interesting thing about Bill Clinton, of course, is that in the sort of late noughties and very early 2000s, he clearly did associate with Jeffrey Epstein, which, as Hillary Clinton points out, says, well, she was serving as a US senator. But it's also pretty clear that in exactly the same period, Donald Trump was associating with Jeffrey Epstein pretty frequently. He's mentioned, as she says in her thing, tens of thousands of times in the Epstein documents that have been released. The other half, of course, haven't been released on basically the decision of the committee and the Republicans on the committee. And far from what Comer was saying in that clip earlier on about the Democrats wanting to bring the Clintons and have just as many questions to ask of the Clintons as the Republicans do. I think the Democrats made it clear in their opening statements that they felt that they wanted to bring the Clintons to give testimony simply to be balanced because they wanted to get testimony from Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton makes exactly that point. So I would just venture to suggest I don't think one can blame congressmen from either party, given the extent of this scandal and the abuse of girls and the trafficking of girls, which has clearly gone on, wanting to hold their hearings. But I think those who felt that it might be a good political move to put the Clintons on the stand may actually be beginning to regret it, because it is reflecting back quite strongly on Trump.
Yeah, I mean, Hillary Clinton is not unused to this kind of thing, is she? She's had head-butting contests in congressional committees before and came out of it pretty robustly. What are you thinking, Rachel?
Well, I also think it's personal for Hillary Clinton in another way as well, because there are links between the thematic links between the very real, abhorrent, multi-decade sex trafficking scandal revolving around Jeffrey Epstein and the completely fabricated conspiracy theory about a sex trafficking ring, QAnon, which revolved around Hillary Clinton. This, bizarre conspiracy theory that she was at the heart of a, I think, satanic paedophile ring, and that there were emails where people who pored over them, Trump very heavily leaned into this idea that there were code words being used about pizza deliveries that referred in fact to child sex trafficking. Now we have millions of documents and emails that don't have any code at all about sex trafficking. That they're very plain and they're very explicit. And I think the way that it's being spun as this is probably something to do with the Clintons, because there's this shadowy conspiracy theory linked to the Clintons, and let's try and tarnish us with them as much as possible, whilst absolving Donald Trump, who himself appears, as Adam said, many times in those files. It's just a rerun of what we saw in the lead up and the aftermath of the 2016 election. I know I sound like a broken record on this, but the double standard continues to astound me. I know it shouldn't, and I know on the other side of the Atlantic it doesn't astound Americans anymore, given the polarization. But the fact that, as Adam said, you've got Democrats who are calling for transparency, across the board, Clinton and Trump, and you've got Republicans doing everything they can to close ranks and protect Trump, whilst going, this is about openness, transparency and accountability, and using the victims as a weapon in this continuation of this polarized fight. I find it absolutely abhorrent.
Yeah, Lara, can you get us up to speed with the Democrat side's efforts to bring Trump more centrally into the frame? I'm thinking obviously about Robert Garcia, who is making the point that he has seen documents, he's seen unredacted documents, he's seen more documents, and among those documents that have not been released, there is a record of an accusation against Donald Trump, of an accusation of sexual abuse against a minor. And he has gone to the Justice Department and said, look, you need to look into this. We want to know why this has not been released along with everything else. Now, here is Robert Garcia speaking outside the House earlier.
The Department of Justice continues to lead a White House cover-up. And we're going to be demanding, even over these next few days, that the remaining files that have not been released get released to the public. It's an additional 50% of files that are missing. It is unconscionable, it is illegal, and Pam Bondi and the president need to answer to where those files are. And that's going to continue to drive our work, not just today, but every single day until we get justice for the survivors.
So, Lara, what do you make of this matter of the unreleased files, and in particular this record of apparently an accusation against Donald Trump of abusing a minor? Where's that going?
Yeah, so on the question of the unreleased files, this has been something that a number of Democrats have been angry about since that latest release of those some 3 million files in the most recent and final tranche of documents that the Department of Justice published. We know that the redactions process to some degree has been a mess and faulty, because we have seen the identities of some victims in some senses revealed, and then of course we have seen a lot of criticism about certain redactions and whether or not they were necessary, which has been turbocharged by that recent process which allowed some lawmakers to go in and view the unredacted files themselves. Now, there have been several news reports in recent days that summaries of interviews that the FBI conducted with that unidentified woman who came forward after the 2019 arrest of Epstein and claimed to have been sexually assaulted by both Trump and Epstein when she was a minor back in the 1980s, that those interviews do not appear in the published files. Of course, Trump denies any wrongdoing. The Justice Department now saying that, some outlets have flagged files relating to Maxwell and discovery of her case that they say are missing. And as with all documents that have been flagged to by the public, the department is currently reviewing files within that category of the production. So clearly, we're not at the final chapter of that question yet. And Democrats like Garcia, who you heard them, will continue to push for these to be released. On a separate note, Democrats, including Garcia, using the appearance of both Clintons, before this committee as yet further evidence that they think they are justified in pushing for somebody like Trump and other Republicans, including, for example, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, who of course featured in the files and appears to have had contact with Epstein after 2005, which is when he said he'd cut off contact with the sex offender. So clearly lots of questions here that will need to be answered.
Yeah, and no real clarity as to why this record of these accusations against Donald Trump were kept back. The Justice Department has said, look, we keep back material where it's a duplicate or where there's no ongoing investigation, but it's not clear precisely in this case what was applied.
Yeah, I mean, we should also say that these, accusations are at the moment still remain completely uncorroborated. So there is a number of a bit more information that people will be expecting to see on this. And as we know, there were plenty of reasons why the Justice Department withheld information in those files. There were a number of conditions that they were bound by under the Epstein Transparency Act when they were releasing those files, information around victims, for example, but also anything prejudicing ongoing cases. So there's a lot at play here. And as we've just heard, Democrats will be pushing tooth and nail over the coming weeks to make sure that this question in particular is answered.
All right. So Lara, do stay with us. So you can just we can talk a little bit about some of the casualties that we have seen in the past day or so, including Larry Summers, who has basically stepped away from Harvard University, where he's been a very prominent fixture for a very long time.